Kent State might have been shaving points. They weren't scoring a lot of points last year. Caleb, what's the latest you can tell us about their coach has been placed on administrative leave? And, this is a team that Tennessee thumped. And this was a team that they went to and they said, oh, Jersey over Bikini, Ashley. Okay, deal. So this is at one point they went to Kent State and they said, would you like a running clock? And they said, no. Score as many points as you want to. We love it. Thank you, sir. May I have another? And Kenni Burns is now placed on administrative leave.
Yeah. So what happened is, and there's a lot of details in this story that I have to break down because I have to say up front, there is no hard evidence of what I'm saying. I'm not trying to libel us, but I'm just trying to say that the behavior of Kent State is very suspicious. So I'm going to take a step back. Dave, going into last year, remember what I told you? It was about a month before the season. We were ranking Tennessee's easiest games. And, cliche, you would think Chattanooga, the FCS team, would be Tennessee's easiest game, right?
Yes.
And I told you going in, I said, no, Kent State is going to be the easiest game for Tennessee. And what I said was Kent State was 1-11 the year before. They have the worst head coach in college football in Kenni Burns. And that was my exact quote. I said they have the worst, maybe the dumbest. A guy who said at one point, some coaches like to see the field from an analytical perspective, but I don't like to think about he basically said, I'm not a guy who does X's and O's. I'm just a CEO. That's my job as a head coach. I'm like, okay, so you're saying you don't know ball, but you're a CEO. That's what Kenni Burns said. And I'm like, okay, Kenni Burns is dumb. He's a terrible coach, and Tennessee's going to blow out Kent State. Now, Tennessee plays Kent State. They jump to Dave, don't forget this. They're favored by 49.5 and the over-under 62. They cover both at halftime. They jump out to a 65-0 lead at halftime. A 65-0 lead. Second half, they say, Josh Heupel goes to Kent State and says, you want to do a permanent run clock, get the game out of here. Kenni Burns says no, which was weird. Like, wouldn't you want to rest your guys from MAC play at this point?
Yes.
So, but he doesn't. He says no. Tennessee goes and wins 71-0 because Josh Heupel doesn't run up the score in the second half. Maybe much to Kenni Burns' chagrin. Later in November, on November the 20th, it comes out that Kenni Burns, Kent State's coach, has $24,000 in credit card debt. Now, Dave,
by the way, if you want to comment on our calendar and whether or not it's creepy that I'm looking for models online, we'll continue sharing those comments from the message board. But keep your train of thought, Caleb.
You have if you're a head football coach making $500,000 a year, $24,000 in credit card debt and getting sued by an Ohio bank over that's a little weird, isn't it?
Yes, makes me feel like you're on the wrong side of a bookie. Unsung says any good-looking woman in Tennessee gear is hot. Continue.
Well, Kenni Burns came out and said this is because of a remodeling and moving project he and his wife underwent. Do you believe that for a second?
No.
Okay, so that now, just yesterday, Kenni Burns was placed on administrative leave. Now, you can't say it's due to lack of performance. People are talking about, oh, he's awful. Well, if you were going to do that, why wouldn't you place him on leave or fire him in November? There's clearly something else there, right? Yes. I want to add to this point. Kenni Burns made my football IQ 1 week last year because, and it wasn't the Tennessee game, Dave. Kent State played Akron the day before his credit card debt story got leaked. I don't know if you know the story of what happened. There were 10 seconds left in the first half, okay? Akron caught a pass to the Kent State 10-yard line. With 4 seconds left, they had no timeouts and the clock was running. You're Kent State, you get a break, right? Oh, we're going to go into halftime. They can't stop the clock. Kenni Burns took a timeout to allow Akron to kick a field goal. I thought that was Kenni Burns panicking. No, at this point, I got to look back. He called a timeout because the only explanation is he was trying to let Akron score. So I got to get to the point of all this added was Kenni Burns shaving points last year, and was Tennessee part of a point shaving scandal that involves Kenni Burns?
Well, not part of it in that they were
not that they were involved in cahoots, but were they just in a game in which Kenni Burns was shaving points?
Okay, let me address that. Before Ashley says she would be down to be the model, but unfortunately I don't live in Tennessee, but she's got somebody else for me. Her name's Sabrina Carpenter. So go ahead and send me her contact info.
Sabrina Carpenter is really, really attractive.
You know who that is?
Oh yeah, she's a great singer. And she has some really nasty lyrics too.
Oh,
But,
okay. Well, I didn't know that. Ashley,
yeah.
maybe you, because I don't know we can afford Sprita. But I will say this. I don't know if that's the situation with Kent State. I don't know if there's point shaving going on there or not. But I do have trouble believing that the NCAA, with the way gambling is so pervasive now, and the way we're all talking about NIL and transfer portal, it feels like I'm moving this hand over here, right, Caleb? And this left hand like a magician's doing something. I'm
Correct.
not saying the NCAA would be in cahoots. I just think that if they knew of a potential gambling issue that was going on, which it almost has to be given the influence of gambling, you would not admit to it until you absolutely had to. I mean, until the feds are involved. You don't think the NBA knew about Tim Donaghy way before the feds got involved? They definitely did, but they didn't want that to come out. Gambling is the one thing. It's not paying players. It's not the transfer portal. It's not coaches making $5 bajillion a year. Gambling is the one thing that can ruin any sport. It absolutely can, even more so than PEDs. And because I will tell you this, if I want to watch a sport that the outcome is decided, then I'll just be like Wade Houston and watch The Young and the Restless, because that's what I love about sports is the end is undecided. So if I had to bet, no pun intended, that there's some sort of point shaving or nefarious activity going on in college football or basketball, I'm all in. I'm all in. Now, we would never be able to prove it theoretically, but I'm totally all in.
Yeah, no, that's something that you got to nip in the bud. And this is why, what have we always said, Dave? This is why Pete Rose was permanently banned from the Hall of Fame. Gambling on, and by the way, I think Calvin Ridley should permanently be banned from the NFL. He never should have been allowed back in the game. If you gamble on the sports you play, I don't even care if you're gambling on things not involving you. I don't care if you're gambling on yourself to win. It is a gigantic question to the integrity of the game.
I agree.
And you got to nip that in the bud. Now, you're right. The NCAA, look, I'll just be honest with you. With a school like Kent State, if they find out Kenni Burns was doing that, look, they might have to go so hard as to institute another death penalty just to make a point. Like you cannot be gambling on this sport
I got no
at
problem.
all.
I got no problem. All right, so
yeah.
let's put a little poll question. Do you believe that games are affected by gambling? You can put it out there however you want to. Now, Nathaniel says pro wrestling did okay. It did, but when did they really take off? It was about the late 80s or so, Caleb, when they were involved with a lawsuit, a trademark lawsuit about the acronym WWF. Somebody else had it, and the World Wrestling Federation got so big that the other place was like, whoa, you're taking our acronym. We're mad about it now. And while they were on the stand, they had to admit to the matches being, as of course they were, predetermined. But they didn't want to admit that. But I will say this, once they came out and admitted, the sport actually got bigger.
Yeah, well, the reason it got bigger for WWF, it actually hurt a lot of the other sport. Wrestling was very territorial at the time. And WWF was just one of the territories in the Northeast. But the reason it worked for WWF and not other ones is WWF, they didn't value in-ring abilities. They're like, no, we're in the entertainment business. We're here to promote people who know how to talk trash on the microphone. So you kind of go to WWF matches to see how good people are at talking. You don't really go to see what they do in the ring.
Sam said there's almost 100% chance of big gambling scandal in major college athletics in the next 5 years.
Well, I think the Kenni Burns thing is the next 1 month. So
yeah, I was going to say 2 years at the very most.
So let's look. We are walking a very tight line here. But Dave, let's just speculation. Do you think Kenni Burns was shaving points?
I mean, based off the information you've given me, I wouldn't jump 100% in it. I wouldn't even say the majority of my thought process is there, but 40% makes me think he did the most dastardly thing in sports, and that's pretty strong.
I agree. And look, it doesn't explain. It's the only thing to explain how bad they were. You watched that Kent State game, Dave. Have you ever seen a football team as bad as Kent State was in that game?
No, they were bad. And I will say this too. I thought I knew college football really well. I mean, I spent 25 years covering it, and more than that, 27 years covering it. And I was a big fan before then, so I thought I knew it all. But man, when I watch that Connor Stallions thing, and there's this subculture, I don't know if you've seen that 30 for 30 thing, how they get up on Sunday morning and they exchange all this information among these bunch of goofballs that don't even get paid, that just are sycophants to the college game. Wow, that opened my eyes. So if somebody told me with all the money that's at stake, there's not some people pulling some strings and doing some things they shouldn't be doing, that would not surprise me at all.
No, not me either. And that's what this looks like. So, I mean, just to point this out, like, this is going to blow up in a huge way. And I'll just put it out there. Josh Heupel's not going to get implicated in this, in the sense that no one thinks he's involved.
Oh, no, I know.
But he might be asked to testify just as evidence against Kent State. Like, Lord. Is there something is there something Josh Heupel was suspicious about? Remember this. Remember this. This is the big part of this game. Josh Heupel did an onside kick in the first quarter, remember? And we're like, why are you running up the score on Kent State like that? But in the second half, he totally ran all clock and just kicked 2 field goals to get out of there. It's almost like he knew something was off with what Kent State was doing with their decision to not run the clock in the second half.
To the message board, brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga's community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. QualityTirePros.com. Tell Bo at Quality Tire Pros that Dave, Caleb, and Off the Hook Sports said, "Hey, Bo." This is a great point that I cannot find all of a sudden. My goodness. That's frustrating. Okay. Caleb, somebody made reference to the officials. Now, I would not be surprised at all if there's a gambling scandal and it's revolves around officials. No, that wouldn't surprise me.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, there are actually when there already have been. And this is where, here's the issue, Dave. My issue is that the federal government hasn't gotten involved yet. I know people are like, oh, Congress shouldn't get involved in anything. No, this is something they should get involved in. Okay. There should be like I said before, unless you're a member of Congress, which that's stupid. Most people can't do insider trading. You can't, that's illegal, right? The federal government says you can't do insider trading. If you even do a hint of it, you go to prison. Martha Stewart, someone told Martha Stewart that the stock was going to collapse and she needs to move her money. And she had to go to prison for a year because she listened to that person. Like,
I don't think that should be illegal, by the way.
Insider trading?
Yeah, I don't.
Really?
Know who you know. You know.
Well, okay, maybe but the insider trading goes way more nefarious than what Martha Stewart did a lot of times. Okay, but what I'm saying is, like, she went to prison for a year. How is betting on the sports you played not insider trading?
It is. Yeah, no, it is. I think it's more likely to happen in basketball than football, and here's why. Because an official has so many bang close calls in basketball. I mean, you can the charge block call is the toughest call to make of any official, right?
The toughest by far.
Now, I could call balls and strikes today, and I haven't done so in 20 years, and I'd hit 95%. You can put the thing out there and test me if you want. But the charge block call is terribly difficult. So you just err on one side to one team. The other way that it's really easy to fix a basketball game is don't miss a bunch of shots, because that's obvious. When you got a guy who's a good shooter, let's say Chaz Lanier threw up about 3 bricks. You'd be like, oh my gosh, that's a good shooter, and he's fixing the game because he's throwing up 3 bricks. You just don't play defense.
Yeah.
You just play weak defense. You let guys get around you. It's not noticeable.
Bite on a crossover.
Very easy. Very, very easy to fix.